In the year 2024, it appears that we are experiencing a fighting game renaissance. Series that never had a ton of success are seen to be known and played by more and more people. There are many reasons for this, mainly for how they are much easier to get into and have a far better netcode, the latter of which is paramount for whether or not a fighting game catches on. Still, with all these titles getting released to commercial success, what about Virtua Fighter? I remember playing the second one back in the day and even put a ton of time into Virtua Fighter 5, which I consider to be the peak of the series. Since then, we've received an additional revision with Final Showdown and a remastered port with Ultimate Showdown, but nothing else. The time is ripe for a return, but who knows when that'll happen. Either way, let's take a look at the final mainline release of Virtua Fighter with Virtua Fighter 5. At the main menu, there are a couple of modes you can play around with, but we are going to start out with the arcade. This is a no-frills run-of-the-mill arcade mode with one of several routes being chosen for you. For my main, I will go with Eileen, who specializes in Kuken, aka monkey-style kung fu. I should also mention that this game doesn't have any character intros or outros, which is a bit disappointing, but considering how bad most fighting game stories are, this may be for the better. The control scheme here is pretty simple. You have a button to punch, a button to kick, and a button to guard. Performing various button combinations including directional and simultaneous presses will lead to a wide variety of moves to pull off. This includes various grabs, counters, and even some stance switches. While the timing can be a bit on the stricter side, it definitely is something all players can get used to, and you'll be pulling off some baller combos in no time. While the control scheme is pretty simple and the combat lacks flash, there are quite a bit of hidden mechanics that help this game stand out for both offensive and defensive play. Pressing the grab button while an attack is happening will allow you to halt the attack. There are also two different kinds of sidesteps, an offensive sidestep and a defensive one. An offensive sidestep involves a simultaneous button press while you sidestep for extra distance, while a defensive one involves you timing your sidestep with an enemy's attack. This is perfect for setting up counterattacks, especially if your opponent is playing aggressively. It's mechanics like these and others that make this one of the deepest fighting games I've ever played. For the roster size, there are 17 characters to choose from right off the bat, with an additional unlockable character Duro, bringing the total number to 18. Compared to his 3D fighting contemporary at the time Tekken 6 with a roster of 41 playable characters, this seems incredibly minuscule on the surface. What Virtua Fighter does is make up in quality what it lacks in quantity. Each character has hundreds of possible combos and moves to learn and execute. Even just grapples, most characters will have several directional and button combinations to pull off, especially for wrestlers like Big Ol' Wolf. Despite the small roster, you'll easily find someone that fits your preferred playstyle. I would even go as far to say that the small roster actually has a hidden benefit as well. Because there aren't a ton of playable characters, the game is far more balanced than the likes of other 3D fighters such as Tekken, Soul Calibur, and Dead or Alive. While there are some characters who are pretty tough to face, I never feel like I'm losing because the character I picked is a bad character or the opponent I'm facing is OP. It's a feeling I have in many fighting games but basically never do in this one. This is all excluding Dural of course, but she's supposed to be an OP bastard, so I'll let that one slide here. And speaking of Duro, that will be your final opponent in the arcade mode. For here, you will have to defeat her in one try, or your arcade mode will end right then and there. It's definitely a challenge to defeat her, as I've only managed to pull this feat once. Thankfully, you don't need to beat her to unlock her, and can do so by beating arcade mode once with each character. Arcade mode is considered complete after beating or losing to her, so nothing to worry about there. If you're going to do an OP boss, this is one way to make sure I don't lose my mind on my 30th try. And now we've arrived at what I've spent a majority of my time playing, and that is the quest mode. This mode here involves you picking a character to ultimately main as and compete with a variety of opponents through several Sega arcades. What's unique here is the open nature of the game, as you can visit whichever arcade you want to at the start. Some arcades will feature easy opponents to get through, while others will have quite challenging ones that will really test your resolve. Every so often, you'll get special matches to compete in. This can be a ranking match to increase your rank, or an item match that'll grant you an item for use for customization. Item matches can also result in an increase in money or even an orb. Collecting a certain amount of orbs will unlock a new item for you to equip. Type C and D outfits can also be unlocked by reaching certain ranks. Outside of seeking matches in arcades, tournaments can become available for you to participate in. The prizes usually involved gaining some money, some clothing, or even an emblem to equip. Some tournaments will be held at the arcades, while others are official tournaments held at the event square. These are pretty easy to get through at first, but end up becoming very challenging later on, especially the ones that change up the rules up so as you'll have more rounds to win, or even lowering the amount of time per round for quick lightning matches. Overall, quest mode is a great way to know your main character and really figure out the best way to utilize them. If you want additional training, there are a few modes here. There's the always essential free practice mode to throw your weight around to see what works and what doesn't. One of my favorite inclusions, however, is the command training mode. From here, you execute the command prompts displayed and move on to the next move once executed properly. Some of the more advanced combos come with video demonstrations, which is always appreciated. There's even a timed variant mode for this, which can be quite the challenge. As much as I do appreciate both modes, I wish there was a more detailed tutorial system for novice players. It's definitely something that a Virtua Fighter 6 can do, whether or not that'll even be a thing. For the presentation, I still think the graphics look really good, especially for when this game was released back in 2007 for the console. The animations are surprisingly smooth and the environments look very good as well. For audio wise, the music holds up very well, but if there's one thing to bring the presentation over the edge, it is the commentary. If you enable it, you'll listen to some of these legendary calls here.
Here's a throw! Eileen! In trouble! Miss! Can't escape! It's in! Take us back through this match.
I'd love to see that again.
The fact that a game from 2007 has better commentary than many esports events does today is mind-boggling for sure. So I think I've explained this well enough, but Virtua Fighter 5 holds up incredibly well. The fighting is crisp, there is a ton of depth, and the quest mode is a ton of fun to go through. If I had to pick a flaw, I can maybe point at the small roster size, but that is almost a moot point considering how much depth and balance is present here. Compared to other 3D fighting games of the time, like Tekken 6 and Soul Calibur 4, I still go back to this one to go through quest mode as a new fighter learning the quirks of the character and how to maximize their effectiveness. If I had to guess as to why Sega believes Virtua Fighter won't succeed, is probably how quote-unquote generic the characters come across and how players would prefer something with a bit more flash. While I can agree to a certain extent, I disagree that there isn't a group of fighting fans who would prefer something more grounded in reality. It's why the Fight Night games and UFC games found success. It doesn't even have to be this crazy AAA title and can work with a medium-sized budget to get some foot off the ground. And if you still feel like there won't be any sales, throw in Kazuma Kiryu from Yakuza and have him throw hands. We've seen Virtua Fighter characters in Dead or Alive games, so maybe bring in some of these to scrap in as well. Either way, I'm getting way off topic for now and I should just wrap this up. Definitely do yourself a favor and track down a copy if you can, grab a couple of friends for some couch play, and you're in good hands. Thank you all for watching as always, and this is Powerhouse, signing off.